Hello, everyone. My name is Vanessa from Prime Legal. As you know, Sada already explained that we are a boutique law firm based in Lisbon city center. So today I'm going to speak a little bit about legal steps to buy a property in Portugal. So basically, we can divide it into main steps. First of all, the due diligence part, and then the acquisition process. So, I am assuming that you already did your research, you already have a broker in place that you trust, and that you can easily deal with. So that part is not the lawyer's job, let's say like that. And then you already selected the property. So, what's next? Basically, we need to be provided with all the legal documentation of the property, such as tax certificate, land certificate, plans, license of use, energetic certificate, etc. We can also have a look on the legal side of the developer, just to check if everything is in place. So, we will issue a due diligence report, red flags, and tell you all about the property and things that you have to be aware of, or if everything is okay, which usually is the case. Then, by deciding that you want to move forward with that property, then it will start the acquisition process with, of course, the negotiation. Sometimes, even if the price is already settled, you have other things to negotiate, as finishing maps or rental guarantee, etc. So as soon as all the terms and conditions are in place, then we can set up the acquisition process. That can be divided in up to three steps: reservation agreement, promissory agreement, and public deed of purchase and sale. Okay? So the reservation document, note that in order to transfer the ownership of the property to you, the mandatory step is in fact the public deed of purchase and sale, which makes the reservation agreement and the promissory agreement not mandatory, although in some cases they are necessary. Okay, so the reservation document is basically a simple document, 2 pages mostly, just to identify the parties, to agree on the acquisition value of the property, to identify the property that you are buying, to set up deadlines, and to fix, of course, very important, the reservation fee, which according to the market practice, it's usually, depending, of course, the price of the property, around 10 to 10,000 euros, 15,000 euros, more or less. Then also reference to bank loans, if you are asking for a bank loan, and any special conditions that need to be mentioned in that document that will affect either the promissory agreement or the actual public deed of purchase and sale. So imagine that you are buying off plan, and that you want to make a small change in the plan, or if you want to add different materials to the finishing map. So those things are, although it can be simple references in the documents, but I believe it's important for you to have everything in place in this reservation document, which will start the acquisition process and then carry on with the other two steps: promissory agreement and public deed. So, as I mentioned, the due diligence, basically, before the reservation agreement, the lawyer already did a preliminary due diligence just to make sure that the developer exists, the property exists, and everything is ready to go in terms of legal work. So the actual due diligence report, what we analyze? We analyze all the mandatory documents that are necessary to be presented at the public deed in order to transfer the ownership of the property. If all the documents are issued correctly, if they are valid, if there are some amendments to be made to the documents prior to the final acquisition of the property. If the property is licensed, if there is legal conformity between the reality of the property and the legal documentation, This is very important, okay? So this is when the relationship between client, broker, and lawyer makes the difference. So we need to make sure that the physical reality of the property matches the legal aspect of it, okay? So this is very important. The existence of debts and encumbrances regarding the property, but also from the developer side, and the existence of course, legal problems and constraints in the building or the unit itself. And then the second step of the acquisition process is, of course, the promissory agreement. That, as I mentioned, it can be necessary, but it's not mandatory. So imagine that you are flying to Portugal tomorrow, and you see the first property, and you fell in love with the property, and you want just to buy it. The property is there, it's finished, concluded, it's perfect, brand new, as you want it. So you don't need necessarily the promissory agreement because the property is there, you have money in your pocket, so you can go and buy it, okay? When the promissory agreement becomes necessary is when you are buying off plan and you need time for the property to be duly constructed and licensed, when you don't have all the funds available and you need to ask for a loan, or just because you need time to arrange other things. So this will be negotiated between the parties, okay? So, useful when the real estate are not ready to conclude the transaction immediately, as I mentioned, off-plan, low, or payment terms. And this promissory agreement will set the terms and conditions of the deal, including down payments, deadlines, and of course, final dates to conclude the transaction with the public deed. If the property is off-plan, for example, then you can also set obligations of changing the finishings, adding extra things that you wanted to add to that particular unit, okay? So, establishes the rights and duties and legal consequences in case of breach. This is very important. And we can include special clauses, okay? It's between the parties to negotiate the terms and conditions of the deal. So, for example, provisional land registry, refund of down payments, compensation for delays, and additional guarantees on constructions and defects, okay? So, even after the transaction occurred with the execution of the public deed of purchase and sale, there are clauses that can be kept into force, okay? This is also important when we have representation and warranties that can be applicable for the future, and we make sure that they are still valid after the execution of the deed. And finally, this is the moment when you become the owner of the property, when you sign the public deed. In Portugal, the public deed can be signed before a solicitor, a lawyer, or a notary. Market practice is to use a notary, I must say, although it's also possible to use either a solicitor or a lawyer. So it's always scheduled with prior notice. Usually the terms and conditions of that is mentioned in the promissory agreement or is agreed between the parties. Then performed before a notary or a Portuguese lawyer. Then it's mandatory, of course, the presence of the parties or their legal representatives. So in our case, Prime Legal, we do represent a lot of clients that they don't even go to Portugal to select the property itself. So in COVID, that happened a lot. So they have virtual visits to the property, they choose, and then we do everything remotely. The only thing that we must have is, in fact, a power of attorney that can also be granted from abroad. For example, here in the UK, we work alongside a notary that does the power of attorney and also the legalization with apostille of that document, post to Portugal, to Prime, and then we can manage everything for you. Of course, that's with the client's consent. We do represent the client, but all the decisions ultimately are agreed by the client. Then, corresponding to the closing of the deal, where the ownership right is transferred to the buyer, as well as the keys of the real estate and the legal documents. So actually in the moment of the signing of the deed, before the notary, then they will deliver the keys, they will deliver the legal documentation, and exactly from that moment on, then the client is considered the legal owner of the property. Also on the day of the execution of the deed is the moment that the taxes are paid, and we are going to discuss about that next. The deed, of course, will mention the parties, terms and conditions, price, how the price was paid if there was a promissory agreement in place, and any special clauses that you want to maintain valid. Also regarding the promissory agreement can be also mentioned in an attached document to the public deed. That is also possible. So, what is the cost of purchasing a property in Portugal? So, you have to think about taxes, of course, notary fees, land registry fees, attorney fees, broker fees. Okay, so in what concerns to taxes, you have transfer tax and stamp duty. The transfer tax can go up to 7.5% on the property price. That will depend on the location and purpose of the property. And stamp duty is 0.8% on the property price. If you go online, you have simulators and you can easily see how much exactly are you going to pay with a specific price. Then land registry fees. This registration is transferring the name of the land registry document from the seller to the client investing, which is more or less 250. Then you have attorney fees. We are very expensive, joking. Broker fees, which usually are paid by the seller. Okay, this is the seller side. It is Bormayu only if you have a buyer's agent, which is typically happening a lot nowadays. So you have a broker that is working for you and finding the property that you want specifically, and sometimes those fees are paid by the buyer. So these are the costs upon completion, upon purchasing of the property. Then you have subsequent costs. So we have the real estate insurance fee, condominium fee, IMI, which is the municipal tax that you have to pay annually just because you own a property in Portugal, maintenance fee, and then local charges by the municipality. Okay? And of course, the utilities, water, electricity, and etc. So, what is the importance of having legal assistance in the acquisition? So, of course, that time is money, and the major reason for the clients to hire legal representation for property purchase is just to make it simple. Okay, so basically, as I mentioned, we just need a power of attorney, and then the rest is done by us. So, preliminary steps like legal framework, granting you a tax number, granting a power of attorney, opening a bank account to facilitate with the payments, and then the utilities as well. Of course, that we will secure and defend your rights and your interests as buyer. We can also participate in the negotiation of the price and other terms and conditions if that is not settled. And most of all, we will perform the legal due diligence and identify any red flags if there is any. Prepare all the required documents and procedure to conclude the transaction successfully. So here we have Mr. Prime. Mr. Prime is a UK citizen who intends to purchase an apartment in Lisbon for 500,000 euros. And Mr. Prime has a lot of questions. Of course, that all the questions will be replied, and he will be assisted by Prime, which is the best law firm in Lisbon. But what are the questions that we have from Mr. Prime? Basically, what shall I do? How does the Portuguese system works? Where can I get started? What are the taxes involved? What is the risk? Am I protected? So these are the questions that we, as legal advisors, will help you to answer and to guide you to make sure that your risk, your exposure to risk is the lowest as possible. Okay, so if you have any additional questions, then we can meet you outside. Thank you so much.